Alright, a rare YouTube video. Yuck. Anyway, on the subject of consciousness, I'm going to post this as a contest entry in the Theories of Everything with Kurt Jamal channel. It's having a contest. So yeah, this is going to be my entry, even though it's just going to be a video of me explaining what I think consciousness is, in the context of what the other talking head types will argue. And, you know, I just don't think they're ever going to get to the truth of what really consciousness is, which is just an illusion that takes place in our brains. It's just synthetic space. I mean, what a calculator calculates is in a synthetic space. It's put on a screen so we can see it, but it calculates whether it sends the information to the screen or not. It does the calculation. Our consciousness is in a screen only we personally see. But that's it. It's just a synthetic thing produced inside of our brain. And yeah, we see it. No one else sees it. I don't see anybody else's consciousness. I don't see them being conscious. I just see them behaving. I see them talking and saying things, and they can tell me they're conscious and they have feelings, and I can relate and say, yeah, I have those too. But it's just synthetic. It's just little bits of electricity. It's completely an illusion. And all you're saying is what kind of screen is it on? Well, it's not on a plasma screen. It's not on an LCD. It's not on a LED. It's not on a screen. It's a thing that happens inside your brain. It's the screen. The event is what you're sensing. And that's it. It's just mechanical. And they're just mechanical elements. But the key point is there's a mechanical element that's a real game changer, and that's the one of sensation. It's this mechanism that makes it possible for you to have a value experience, for your consciousness to do more than just process, more than just fill in. Like your eyes could have, you could have pieces of your retina that are missing, and your brain will fill in the blanks. Your brain can create, okay, it can fix. And the game is that there's a sort of part of your brain that's there to break. That's the feeling part. The part that's there to make noise and to tell you, to be used as a motivator. And it works for evolution. But it's not something we could build from the outside in. It can only be built from the inside out. It can only happen through evolution or some process like that. We can't synthetically make something feel. You know, because we can't make something, I suppose we can't make something that could connect what it's saying, you know, one kind of computer process into another computer process. They have to be built into each other. They have to be integrated. Alright, so anyway, that's a short version. Kind of a harsh and obnoxious version. There's no hard problem. Consciousness is an illusion. Your sensations are an illusion. Your thoughts are an illusion. They're just something happening in little bits of space. They physically happen. Your brain is a physical pattern. But there's nothing more to it. And it's it just happens that one of the programs running, like any of the other programs, these mechanical programs that are filling in the blanks, one of them is just making a lot of noise. Sensation. The volume's turned all the way up. You know, it's feedback. And the rest of the computer has to deal with the feedback. It has to deal with the obnoxious noise kind of thing. Alright, so anyway, so these two guys are going to talk about consciousness. Now one of them, the guy on the left is got a super big IQ, and the guy on the right is somebody I've seen before. He's some sort of, it's mostly woo science stuff in my opinion. Okay, woo physics. So anyway, and the question is you know, is the Google's newest version of AI, is it conscious? And it's almost a silly question, because for it to be conscious, what you have to ask it is, do you feel? Do you feel in some way like you have good days and bad days? Do you really have some recognizable sensation that makes your day good or makes your day bad? And that's the question. You'd have to just make up a lie, right? You'd have to program it to lie because it can't answer the question. But anyway, obviously it doesn't feel. And without feeling, I'd say you're not even close to being conscious. Without the feelings, without the sensations, the thoughts don't really even have a space. They don't mean much. It's connecting them to the memories and connecting the memories to the feelings that makes the whole thing have any coherency, I would argue. But anyway, so their answers to the question just get into a bunch of metaphysics. So they brought up this word metaphysics. So I'd first argue there's no such thing as metaphysics. They're just either you're explaining reality or you're not. There's a reality, it's there to be described. There's not physics and then metaphysics. There's just physics. You describe the physical reality. How does it physically function? That's the end of the physics subject. There's no other physics subject. There's no other subject. There's just factual statements about how the system of mechanical bits in the universe works. And you can make statements about those mechanical bits. Now, I would argue that both of these guys probably have no clue how physics works because they bought into a bunch of wave-particle duality and a bunch of superposition nonsense and entanglement nonsense and all kinds of weird crap that is affecting their ability to see what we really are, which is just a digital computer. It works in the same logic principles. We have neurons that are basically logic gates. They're just saying, you know, they're a little more complicated than on-off switches, but not much. They're basically just saying, look, I'm going to sense 10 things, and if any five of those things turn on or say yes, then this one will say yes. You know, I'll just turn this switch on. And if it's less than 5, I won't. So they're just gates, logic gates. And it's the same thing as a digital computer's doing. So yes, the gates would be a little different. Instead of just asking if, then, else kind of things, it might be they have a few other words they can throw in. But it's just logic gates. Same thing as a calculator. It's not doing anything different. That's why we have so many neurons, is because it's a bunch of these little mechanical switches that are just turning on and turning off. Turning on, turning off. Sending a signal, not sending a signal. That's the basic function. And so we're really just talking about how does it output. You know, does it have a digital display? And that's the argument, is no, there's no digital display. It's inside your head, the digital display. The screen is inside your head. The theater is made inside your head. The movie, the theater, the screen, and even you are all synthetic things sitting in a synthetic, fake little world of on and off digits. You're in the matrix, in your own brain. It's just a matrix. It's just a program. All right, so now they're just arguing over the word metaphysics, and they both have a wooey objection to calling the computer conscious. Now, I'd say it's not conscious because it doesn't feel. There's an explicit reason why it's not conscious. They're more saying it's not conscious because it's not biological. I don't think that's the standard. I don't think that has anything to do with it. Whether it's made out of I don't care what, it doesn't matter, silicone, doesn't matter what you make it out of, it doesn't matter what kind of substance you make the substrate of the computer out of. You can make it out of tin cans, you can make the logic gates out of tin cans, you can make them out of used soda bottles. It doesn't matter what you make the logic gates out of. What matters is how does it input and output? What is it outputting to? And that's the real part that's tricky. And the point is it's just a calculation. It's just a synthetic. And as Einstein would say, it's one hell of an illusion. Okay? The fact that you sense and feel is just an illusion. It's just on and off switches. That's all it is. Alright, so I'll play a little more of this and see. And comment. And that's all I'll do, basically. So the video, I can play some of them talking. But it's, they get caught in all their little, special language, and I don't think there's much point in it, I mean, you can have a taste of it.
And many different people have defined it in many different ways. And the long and short of it is, although I respect people having their own ideas about things, I don't find that especially useful. You can go and look at everybody's definition and not come out with anything very stable.
So they're just wasting time arguing over the definition of metaphysics. So yeah, forget it. It's a stupid word. Don't play with it. Yeah, all right. So I'll be back. All right, so injected was the word computation and its relevance to somehow how this is a useful term in a conversation about consciousness, and it doesn't really, in my opinion, it doesn't mean anything because we already know they're just reflexes. A reflex is a computation, okay, and your knee jerks. Right, and all you're saying is okay, I can have this simple autonomic, my finger has nerves and they have the ability to react without even my brain knowing about it, having anything to do with it. And that's all your brain is a bunch of those piled on top of each other. It's just a bunch of the same thing over and over and over and over and over. So it's just a complexity, it's a filter. Your intelligence is just a filter on top of a knee-jerk, on top of a simple action. Go, don't go, flight or fight. And we have this whole complex layer to tell us when it's time to jump or not jump. And that's it. So it's a simple action or a simple reaction or a simple decision being made, and we're making it insanely complicated because we have a whole bunch of these little knee jerks on top of it that have to be satisfied before it percolates to a decision. But it's just a really simple mechanism. It's really, the device is simple. The first feeling brain was not a sophisticated brain. It was a trilobite, something really simple, and it learned how to live in its environment. And the only way it could learn is to be rewarded and punished, or to be punished and unpunished. And that's why we're conscious, is because punishment works in terms of teaching lessons. Yeah. So he's going to talk a little bit about Penrose and this and that and all this bullshit. And anyway, so let's let him bullshit. So you can hear a little bit of this bullshit.
They would say that it's when mass crosses a certain threshold that you have collapse, and the moment of collapse is an experience. So they are saying a lot more than to just say the universe computes. So
yeah, it's just silly talk. The universe doesn't compute. Systems can have that mechanism built into them, but there has to be a system. It has to be an organization. There has to be a level of complexity before you can do anything that could be called a computation, or even anything called a rational reflex. A reflex that has any coherency to an actual outcome, and that outcome actually being tested as being useful. We have reflexes because they are useful. We don't have them for no good reason. They exist because they have a function. Alright, so we'll see what the other guy says. Alright, this is starting to go a little south in the sense that this guy is starting to talk like he's saying there's some kind of free will or something. And that's really not going to work. That somehow we need a catch to get out of this computation idea of determinism. Why do we need to do that? I mean, every decision we make is, you could argue, a million layers of reflexes to get to that decision. That there's a million little knee jerks that have to click before I can even, speak a sentence. My subconscious is doing a lot of work to create me, whatever me is. I don't write these sentences. I don't write what I just said, okay? My brain knows the agenda. It goes through a whole bunch of stuff flying around in there. It's composing sentences right now. It's moving my hand. It's aware of my eyes moving, hey, you gotta look at the camera. It's, all kinds of shit's going on. But none of it's magical. None of it's random. All of it is oriented towards steering this boat. It knows where the boat's going. The boat is having a conversation about a subject, and it's putting together all the ideas and notions it has about how you explain a subject, how do you talk about a subject, what words you should use. Oh, don't throw any F-bombs, don't call anybody a skanky anything. be careful this, do that. It's doing all that crap right now. But none of it's free. None of it's, I did it. No, my brain's doing it. And it's just doing it with a bunch of calculations. It's just doing it by adding it up and saying, what's the total? Alright, well, let's just play a little bit of this guy talking.
Quantum Turing machine is a little bit like a classical Turing machine. Still got the tape. It's still got the processor. You know, it's that tape. By the way, that's like a typographical array in formal systems, and this is once again inadequate. The reality is generative. It actually has a way of putting itself together from scratch. It originates things rather than causing.
Yeah, whatever. Look, the idea is yeah, you can use a simple basic machine, and all you got to do is shove that feeling thing into it, and then it's going to start thinking about what it's feeling, and it's going to try to engineer ways to feel better. So once you can engineer a feeling into a device and a processor, okay, the processor is going to have an agenda now, because now it has a welfare. Now it has a if you give it buttons to press, if you give it outputs to create that minimize its pain and suffering, it will press the right buttons to suffer less. And that's all we're doing. Except we're doing it through this layer of a million, little switches, little reflexes, little knee jerks. We have a million dumb reflexes before you get to actions. Something like that. No, I mean, I sure didn't get very far before it went all wooey. Alright, so this guy just said it. I mean, just said the magic crap words, just the quantum bullshit. There's no... how do I go back a few seconds? It's a 2-hour video. Let's try and see what happens. Okay. And see, I mean, this is just, absolute mush. Okay, quantum computer isn't deterministic. I mean, bullshit all over the place. Yeah, it is. And then he says it can do very exact computations. No, it does very inexact computations. The only thing the quantum computer is actually calculating are random numbers. It can produce random numbers faster than regular computers because they have to be generated by essentially artificial chaos. So it can create nonsense faster than a regular computer could create nonsense. It doesn't answer smart questions. It answers the dumbest question you could ask. That's all a quantum computer can do.
Well, there has to be structure to computation. We may call that mechanistic if we want, but there has to be structure. Otherwise, it's just randomness. The universe doesn't seem to be completely random. There is order. There are regularities in nature. We model them in the form that we call the laws of physics. So there is at least emergent order.
Okay, so this emergent word comes up, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, I'm way not where I wanted to be. So anyway, it doesn't matter. I'll just play the video and I'll get back to you. But he does say all that quantum crap. Gee, I'm almost tempted to play the video because the guy just said this more crap about, it can be random and deterministic. And, just nonsense. More nonsense about how quantum physics takes the randomness that exists in the small scale and turns it into exactness in the big scale, because of the large numbers. And that's not what's happening either. The fact is there's some rule that has to exist. There's not some... Randomness isn't what makes it happen, okay? I mean, it's not some randomness that gives you the double slit pattern. It's not randomness that creates the outcomes over all the quantum possibilities. All of those outcomes are strictly laws. It's the law of any circumstance that you're in, the particular circumstance of whether you're doing Compton scattering or whether you're ejecting electrons. It's about how much voltage you put in. It's about the circumstances. The circumstances dictate the outcome. There's no randomness dictating the outcome. The circumstances are dictating it. Every example has its own rules. Like if you're rolling dice versus playing cards versus playing roulette, each one of those machines, each one of those devices has a different set of rules about the probability of outcomes. And those probabilities are rigid. So there wasn't randomness, didn't have any. Randomness does not turn into order, ever. Doesn't. It can't. So yeah, the order has to be built into the system. The system has to be a square, or it has to be a rectangle, or it has to be some kind of geometry that obliges an outcome. So this guy's going to interrupt, and so let's see what he says. Hopefully it'll be something good.
Probability theory, you can't get the randomness out of it. You take all the randomness out of probability theory and it ceases to be probability theory. Then it becomes a classical mechanistic system.
It is exactly that. That's exactly what it is. There is no randomness. There is no... randomness serves no purpose. You could get to the answer so much quicker if you just used the small-scale system without any randomness in it. Randomness is just noise. It doesn't help at all. You want the outcome. You don't want the, like, blanks on a dice. You don't want some thing on the dice that creates a null result. You want the results. You want the required outcomes. So, yeah, so bullshit on all this. Alright, well, we'll just skip ahead. But yeah, it's going very badly. Yeah, so this isn't, sorry, this isn't physics, and it isn't science, and it isn't grounded in the fact that we live in a very mechanical universe, and there's just no room for any you know, whatever, happy accidents. I don't know what the right word would be. No room.
Right. In order to accommodate that, we change from classical mechanics to quantum mechanics. We need something more than that, something that is pre-real, what John Wheeler called pre-geometry. We need something that actually precedes mechanisms, that precedes computation, that even precedes cognition. And that is what I refer to as, what Schopenhauer referred to as will, what I refer to as telesis. So this is, we have this underlying kind of pre-mechanic.
All right, so yeah, oh, ew, I forgot to turn it on. That's unfortunate. Oh, so what did I just say? All right, so it's about the simplicity of the underlying rules, and the idea is that yes, the fact is if you go all the way down to the smallest universe, all you have is this idea of charge. All you do is have electrons and protons attracting and repelling each other, and that's what you have to make all of this logic out of. That's what you have to make your digital computer out of. That's what you have to make anything that does anything sophisticated or complicated in terms of, you know, having an input and then having an output and creating a whole bunch of tests that it has to go through before it gets to the output. And all of that has to be made out of electrons and protons. It has to obey these rules. That's why they're usually electrical, and because that's the quickest way to do it. That's why we have neurons. It's because evolution fell upon the speed of electricity. You know, there's no other kind of brain on Earth. All there are neurons. Neurons are the only thing making brains because they can work so quickly, because they are using electricity. But again, you're going to have to go back to the elemental universe to find the mechanism to make all of the distance between input and output, all of these little reflexes, each one of these questions that is asked, if, else, then, all these programming statements about testing something, testing a condition, and then having an output. It's just about inputs and outputs. And all of that has to be made out of the simplest stuff in the universe. That's the only that's where it starts. But there's an infinite amount of complexity you can create, because you can create an infinite amount of test instruments, so to speak. You can create I mean, infinite's the wrong word to use, but an insanely dense amount of gates for your input to go through before you get to an output. And clearly our consciousness is incredibly slow when you think of how fast the electricity is moving at the speed of light, and how long it takes us to speak a sentence or to say anything. We talk really, really slow when you consider how fast the brain is working. So, sorry you missed all the other stuff I said. Damn. All right, good news there. I had said something about Schopenhauer, but the guy mentioned was implying that Schopenhauer was a free willer, and the other guy is pointing out that no, well, you know, Schopenhauer is kind of famous, but for the saying, basically mocking the idea of free will. You know, you can will what you want, but you can't want what you will, or whatever, the vice versa. Anyway, you can't will your will, and you won't decide your decisions. Your decisions will be decided by your brain, and it's going to be decided by which position the switches are in. And it's all about what position the switches are in. Change a switch, you change the outcome.
So that you can follow your choices doesn't mean that there is no determinism, because your willing is already determined.
Right. What I was referring to is the title of this magnum opus, The World is Will and Representation. Basically, the will has to somehow precede the representation, or it is totally useless and trivial.
Well, whatever that means, right? I don't know what the hell that could possibly mean. The will has to precede the reputation. I don't know. That just sounds like gobbledygook to me. But whatever. Just the idea that there's some program in us that we'll call our will, when all you're really saying is that you have a tendency. And you have some habits that are really strong habits, like you do it all the time, and you have other habits that, yeah, you can play with them a little bit. You know, you can do some things left-handed, you can do some things right-handed, you can do some things with either hand. And some things you can only do left-handed, some things you can only do right-handed, because that's the way you're programmed to do it, and that's the way it's going to work, because of the switches. And you can't will it some other way. You can't say, I'm going to be different. You have to learn and change to be different. The difference has to be made in you. It can't just arise out of nothing. Something has to cause the difference. Everything has to have a cause. There's no effect without cause. Alright, so they really are just going to argue free will here a little bit, which is okay. You know, because it does get to this idea that, you know, first I could just argue there's no such thing as a free, so why are we even talking about free will? That doesn't even mean anything. What you want is educated will, or smart will, or insightful will, or wise will. You want a will that is improved. You want it to do good things. You want it to be better will. You don't want free will. Just like if you're doing math, you want to be able to get the right number. So you want to know what 2 plus 2 is. You want to know 4 times 4. And you want to know 768 times 432. You want to know the right answers. You want to know, you know, you don't want the wrong answers. You don't want random will. You don't want free to get the wrong answer. You want limited to getting right answers. You want controlled will. You want a will that's controlled to get 2 plus 2 is 4. You don't want a will that thinks 2 plus 2 is 6. I mean, duh.
Without structure. And we try to fit free will somewhere in between, but I think it's incoherent. So for Schopenhauer, the essence of the world is will. The essence of us is will. Everything is will, and by the way, there is only one will, the one eye of the world that looks out from every creature, as he wrote it. But that will...
Oh, and that's just so disgusting in a way. You know, there's no, you know, we know the will is just one program inside of you. It's whatever dominated at this moment. Whatever is most important to you at this moment is what you call your will. But that's it. It's just whatever your passion is at this particular moment. And that could just be you smashed your finger with a hammer. Now you have to bandage it. And so your will is to bandage it correctly and all that kind of crap. Whatever you're distracted by, whatever is, you know, currently the thought streams, that's your will at the moment. Who cares? You have lots of agenda programs. You have lots of, oh yeah, I have an appointment on 5 o'clock on Thursday, and I have this I have to do, and I have to get that done, and I have to remember to fix that. I have to put this drill bit, I have to put it back where it belongs so I can find it the next time I need it. Lots of things I have to do. Lots of wills that have to be satisfied over the next week. I have a whole bunch of little agendas I have to get done, little frickin' bullet points, little whatever, 9x5 cards or what, 5x4 cards or whatever. I have lots of shit, okay? It's not my will, it's my knowledge base, it's my brain organizing my existence and saying these are what the things you have to do to satisfy your survival necessities. And so it's remembering them, it's got them all in here. Oh, I gotta remember to get back to that guy because, you know, he sent me an email and I gotta respond, and it's got all that shit in there, and it just reminds me, and it runs it, and it says, oh, it's, you know, it's getting late, you gotta make that phone call, you gotta do this thing over here. There's no free in any of that crap. You know. So the guy with the mustache thinks there is a free will, and the other guy understands, yeah, the will is just a byproduct of another program. It's just the crap your brain is, you know, running, and you know, just throws it into the present now and then and reminds you, oh, you have things to do. All right, so we'll play a little more of this, but you know.
The patterns of behavior of that will are archetypal. He even made a comparison to Plato's ideal forms, which was his way to say the will is not arbitrary, it's not random, it fits according to certain templates that he. And then in the second edition of The World as Will and Representation, he added something to say, well, I actually misrepresented Plato, and then he tried to correct that, but he still insisted on the main point, which is the will unfolds according to predictable templates. And in that sense, the unfolding of the will is not...
Yeah, they're tested templates. Again, 2 plus 2. Once you know 2 plus 2 equals 4, you're not going back. You're not going to be like honestly confused. You're not going to honestly say to somebody else, no, 2 plus 2 equals 3. It's not going to be an honest statement. You know better. You know it's 2 plus 2 does equal 4. And all the other numbers are now eliminated. And you have no freedom to say, oh no, 2 plus 2 equals 3. You have no freedom to believe otherwise. You're done believing otherwise. Somebody might fool you when you're a kid into thinking there's UFOs or something, and then you hear all the evidence about why it's not really possible, and you know, you watch Star Trek and you think a warp drive is going to happen, and then you find out how, what, a grain of sand will blow up your spaceship. Yeah, you figure out, no, it's not really going to happen. No, it's nonsense. You're no longer free to believe in crap anymore, okay, because of knowledge. So the knowledge breaks any freedom, and you end up with a smart will. You end up intelligent rather than stupid and random and full of nonsense. That's the important feature. So anyway, we'll listen to the other guy try to qualify Schopenhauer as a free willer.
Random or...
Well, the way I interpret what Schopenhauer was saying, I know you're an expert on Schopenhauer, by the way, but the way I interpret what he was saying was basically there's a combination of will and representation, and it's the combination that's important. So that's what I mean, but when I use the term metaformal, I mean you're putting those two things together, right? So, but there is something else. There is a higher form of determinacy. I call it metacausation sometimes, that actually is determining what happens. It's not just the representation, it's not just the will, it's the two things in tandem.
Brief aside for today's sponsor, NordVPN. Please continue watching as...
Oh, it really does go south so quickly. Anyway, commercial, which was kind of ugly. But anyway, so he had him define the word reputation, which means it's just a semantics term for what something looks like rather than what something is. And so he's arguing that Schopenhauer believed that the will is everything, and somehow it's that somehow the material universe is made out of will. And it just, this is Leibnizian wacky. Might as well start talking about solitons and monads. I mean, it's just too silly. We're just the byproduct of a mechanical process. We're just a bunch of knee jerks. You're just a smart fish. You're just a fish that can sing and dance. You're a mechanical machine dodging bullets, and that's all you're doing. You're playing a video game. There's nothing else to see here in a sense. Yes, it's obviously more than that, but I'm just saying the elemental function is that simple. It's just a ball bouncing between the flippers in a pinball machine, and there could be just random flippers. some of them could be just random flip. There's no place for the ball to go, let's just put it that way. So it's just banging off the bumpers. And that's all you're doing. You're just bumpers. There's a ball bouncing around inside of your bumpers. Your bumpers were made by where you were born and, you know, how people interacted with you. That's the arena, and the ball just bounces around, producing the outcome that is you. And there's nothing else to see here, in a sense. Obviously, the fact that we are sentient, that we feel, and that our feelings have immense value makes the simplicity of the pinball machine a ridiculous analogy in that sense, because there's so much at stake for a conscious organism that can be tortured. But that's all. The torture isn't have anything to do with the fact that it's such a powerful motivator. Doesn't have anything to do with the fact that it's still being caused by a very unpowerful, a very simplistic mechanism of silly switches, turning on and turning off, little lights blinking on and off. Our destiny is in the hands of, you know, very simple processes. Another way to say it, I suppose. All right, let's play a little more of this, and I really will try to do a few minutes.
Experiences, you know, in other words, experiences that are not perceptual in nature, they are endogenous, they arise from within. And representation is how those experiences present them.
Okay, so it just really doesn't have, there's no such thing as how they present. I mean, we have dreams. The dreams are made out of kernels of our experience, and again, it's just made with some noise in it to create a challenge for us to overcome. So our brain, it has to trick us. It's trying to fool us. It's trying to fool itself. So to test us. And so somehow we can't know the answer to the test. So it has to create something that's a little bit funky, because otherwise we would know that it's testing us. So it has to fool us into falling for it. And so, you know, that's so but it has nothing, none of it's real. Whether you're dreaming or you're concentrating on some actual physical thing happening in your right now, as far as your brain's concerned, those two things are not different. They're both testing you. They're both saying trigger me. They're both saying cause responses. And it's just in the dream state, not only is the creation, what's on the screen, a little bit fuzzy, your logic is a little fuzzy. And you go for things that you would never go for in reality, because you've been put in a suspend disbelief mode, where the obvious triggers aren't there. I can't fly, for example. I know I can't fly, but in a dream I can. You know, so it's realistic to jump out of a window sometimes. All right, anyway, continuing shortly. All right, didn't get very far again. So anyway, it's another bringing up math, and it's like, so Schopenhauer was missing under, you know, a cognitive, a structured mathematical mechanism to put this mush together with, and frankly, it's mush. Okay, I mean, again, we're just computers. All of our neurons, okay, there's not special. It's not like there's anything special going on. They're all doing the same shit over and over again. They're just processing. They're just storing information. I mean, I could use the analogy. I had a stroke 20 years ago and lost everything on the right side. And I got it back again, but I got it back in a completely different set of neurons, all right? I mean, the original neurons are dead. And so new neurons had to be used to create this order of you know, knowing how to do this, you know, sign my name. All of this shit had to be written as a program somewhere else out of other neurons that would be used for all the other crap that I do. And I can still live with that fact, just because if I do get too stressed or I'm doing something energetic, I'll start to lose a little bit of this. You know, this will start disappearing. My foot will start to drag. You know, because I'm reusing those neurons. You know, I'm taking away some of that redundancy that makes it possible for you to have preciseness. The preciseness that we have is made out of redundancy. It's made out of a whole bunch of checks that say yes, 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 yes. And so anything that you're doing that's sophisticated has a bunch of these checks. And if you're using half of those checks to do something else, that means you're not checking for error. It means there's fewer error checks. And so more mistakes will be made. And that's what it's sort of indicating. It's sort of showing how the game works. We're just computers. And the key difference is we feel. We feel good and we feel bad. And that's really, really a strong tool inside of our computer. And it's the one that makes us not very good at computing in some respects, because it biases us because of our personal agenda. Because we are personally going to be affected by what we calculate. If I calculate the number 5, and I don't, 5 is kind of weird and queer. I like 4s better. That kind of silly crap gets in the way of us doing logic because we like certain colors. So if our brain computes, well, red is the right thing to paint it today, but my brain says, I don't like red. I want green. That kind of bullshit gets in our way. Alright, so we'll play a little bit of this. Nothing. Perfect.
The reference to semiotics, well, semiotics is language related, something that has to do with language. That's the word.
Okay, let's forget about this symbiotics. I mean, it's sort of just girly talk, okay? That anything is really symbiotic. Everything that turns out to be some relationship in the universe where two things seem to be helping each other, it's because it started off as one thing just being a parasite. And they learned, okay, to take advantage of that relationship. But that's how it starts. It doesn't start with any kind of goodwill, okay? It just starts with parasitism. Alright, that's enough for now. I will advance to the next subject. Alright, so the good guy, in some respects, the determinist, just said something, that Schopenhauer believed the will was eternal and universal or something. Some kind of mush like that. And it's just so silly. The will is just a program. It's just the number 5. It's just a theme. It's just a tendency. It's just a habit. That's all it is. It's nothing eternal, nothing universal. It doesn't float through space anywhere. It's just nonsense. I mean, it's really yuck. Ew. Creepy. Oh, this is just so mushy. So they're still talking about Schopenhauer, still talking about this idea that there's an underlying will of some kind, whatever that would be. They're just programs. You can raise a human being to be almost anything, okay, by flooding it or segregating it from reality, okay, raise it in the dark, raise it in all kinds of different circumstances, and its will be completely dictated by what you create as a focus, what you create as something for it to concentrate on or to focus on or to, so its icons, its totem poles will be completely different depending on its will totem poles, what you've made it to be. So you can make something into something that has a devotion and it's just doing that one thing. You can even see that in athletes now, as they're sort of made from birth. They're migrated into being machines that do this one thing. And you can see the failure of that in the sense that the rest of their lives turns into shit. But anyway, so I'll play a little.
That's basically the metaphorical concept that I'm getting at. And Schopenhauer is useful in this regard because that's what I think he was trying to get at too.
People today who think that Schopenhauer was in some sense a dualist or a dual aspect monist, I can only say they haven't read Schopenhauer. They didn't even begin to read Schopenhauer, because the man couldn't have been more unambiguous, more explicit than he was. In the world as will and representation, particularly from the second edition on, when he added, twice the material, he kept the original but then doubled it. He repeats himself so many times. He says this.
Yes, you're right. He writes two big, giant, thick books. And it's just like he's telling the same Three Bears story over and over again, just in a different way, which I didn't find very appealing, frankly.
Same thing in so many different ways, as though to make sure that he couldn't be misunderstood.
Either that or he was being paid by the word.
Yeah, it's just, it's surreal. And on Wikipedia the other day was still listing Schopenhauer as a dual aspect theorist. And even,
I mean, you know, all these stupid titles and all this crap. I mean, what they really should just point out is that, yes, Schopenhauer's conclusion is it's all for naught. We're all just up each other's ass. We're all up our own ass. We're all full of shit. The whole thing is bullshit. Let it go. This isn't a great idea. We're not going anywhere. We're not getting anywhere. We're not built to win. We're built to keep fighting a fight that doesn't need to be fought. Yeah. They ought to talk about that. Schopenhauer was not at all optimistic. You know. But anyway.
the world's supposed greatest scholar in Schopenhauer, a character from the UK called Christopher Janeway, the man just doesn't understand Schopenhauer. I mean, I'm sure he has studied Schopenhauer a lot, but you know, intensity of study does not guarantee understanding. And the guy doesn't even begin to understand Schopenhauer.
Yeah, well, whatever. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, we'll jump through some of this.
Ideas of self, where just like ideas, all objects have some significance specific to them, however seemingly banal, but only tellers as ideas of self would be self-modeling and therefore truly take on self-awareness.
Right, that's why they're called tellers.
Oh, just what a 4-hour question about determinism, premised on some notion again that somehow the universe has complexity built into it. That the small universe is doing something that has complex features that are arising, that emerge into more complex features. No, it's a simpler universe all the way down. Everything gets simpler and simpler and simpler, just like your brain can be dissected into a bunch of reflexes, into a bunch of little tiny knee jerks. That's what you're made out of. That's the element of a logical system, is a knee jerk, a thing that asks a question. If there's two things that are on here, then the third thing will be on here. If these two things are off, it'll be off. Okay, you know, they're just gates, logic gates. That's it. That's your brain. There's no brain built into the universe. The universe doesn't have any logic gates. The universe doesn't have sense organs. The universe doesn't have any of those features. We're a byproduct of specialization. The brain is specialized to perform this task based on the evolution of a DNA molecule that doesn't have any logic gates. It doesn't have a brain. It doesn't test anything in any other way than say, did it replicate successfully? The end. I mean, come on. It's just, it's this hunt for the you know, some sort of universal consciousness or universal intelligence. It's just nonsense. We're made of a very simple universe. Electrons and protons, attraction, repulsion. That's all there is. And the fact that you can see it in the atoms. There's 100 atoms, fundamentally. 100 arrangements of electrons and protons. And yet there's a gazillion combinations you can make out of that 100. But it's much simpler. The atoms are much simpler than the compounds.
That's why self-type identity operators are called tellers, whereas tertiary identity operators are fermionic, more or less, and they are inanimate, or at least usually considered to be inanimate, but basically they're embedded in secondary tellers, and therefore they take the higher order metacausation, that ability to self-model from the secondary tellers.
So I assume you're answering the question right now, but Chris, I didn't understand the question. So can you explain the question back to myself and then answer it?
Well, states, you know, there's no such thing as a state in isolation. States are always relatively defined. That's why we have theories of relativity and things. But what must a state be defined relative to? Well, to completely define any state in the universe, you need to refer to every other state in the universe because it parameterizes that state.
Oh, whatever. I mean, obviously it's just cause and effect, so you just look for the history, you look for the footprints, you look for the smell, the taste, of whatever, some evidence of what caused the effect. And, you know, that's all there is. There's no relativity. It's an absolute universe. It has absolute space. It has 3 dimensions. It has all of that crap. And yes, there's things that happen in a relative circumstance, but they don't change the fact that it's still happening in a universe of rules. And the rules are electrons and protons. The rules are charge. The rules are these elemental bits inside of atoms that are controlling everything. They have to do it first. If you have a thought, you have a thought because electrons and protons did it first. The small universe is the only universe, and that's where it all derives from, and it's all mechanical, and there's no room for any spirits or ghosts or gremlins or fairies or pixies or anything else. No freeze. There's no little freebies floating around. Oh, brother. So this guy's a real wooist. I mean, this is just absolute, you know, might as well go back to solitons and monads. This is all, you know, yuck. You know, he's got his whole, the universe has free will. I don't know. It's just, sorry, just tellers and tellerites. You know, I just, yeah, forget it. This isn't physics. It isn't real. It's just wooey mush. It's as fake as his background. No chance. Alright, so we'll play a little bit of this. The other guy should be interrupting now.
Embraces something like this and his analytic idealism, I think is what he calls it. And basically you've got to have that going.
Okay, so let me be blunt. So free will, in your theory, in your model, Chris, exists. And Bernardo, if I'm correct, you're against the idea of free will, at least currently.
Well, let me tell you what free will is first before
Okay.
Bernardo gets going. Okay. Yes. As I said, there is no typographical array in the metaformal system. Okay. You can't use, to parameterize a state, you cannot just use a fixed array. The array has to be changing geometric dynamically is the term that the followers of Einstein came up with to describe what must be going on. It's happening behind the scenes.
Oh, whatever. It's happening behind the scenes. You know, the magical whatever that tells the electron to woo. So it's just woo, and there would be the idea of free will again doesn't mean anything. Free to what? Get wrong answers? I mean, the whole point of even talking about the will and the fact that you have choices is to make the right choices, not to make wrong choices or random choices. The whole point of having a will is to make right choices. What good would it do me to have to be free to make wrong choices, or to make neither right nor wrong choices? Those are all not good options. I don't need that freedom. I need the narrowness to make right answers, and always be reliably making right answers. I don't need a will that's driven by some, well, you could be a complete asshole at any minute. What use would that be evolutionarily? What use would that be as a pragmatic matter? Why would I need that in my job performance rating or something? Oh, he randomly fucks up. What good would that do me? So this whole notion, this whole conversation about any kind of notion of a free will is premised on some notion that you have a homunculus inside of your brain, that there's another person in there who knows the right answer and is being kind of wishy-washy about telling you the right answer. And so you have a free will in the sense that, oh yeah, there's part of you that knows all the right answers, and it sometimes decides to tell you the right answer. I mean, it's just nonsense. You'd have to have a superior will. Free will is useless. It doesn't even make any sense. The choice to not get 2 plus 2. Somebody asks you how much is 2 plus 2, and you having the freedom to say 3 is not a good thing. All right, let's see what the other guy says.
Okay, free will happens because things are determined metacausally, you know, and metaformally, which means that things have to be coupled or factorized. Right? In other words, it's just not this linear process, this causal process, but it's this higher order process called metacausation that is occurring. And this.
Blah, 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 blah. I mean, there's nothing free. Electrons and protons are not free. They're not able to just randomly do nothing or something. It's just bullshit to think so. It's just bullshit. And freedom, again, does not make reason. It does not make right choices. Freedom isn't a good thing. It just isn't. The freedom to be an asshole is not a benefit.
This is free will. If we look at a conspansive cycle in the CTMU, it's an alpha-omega cycle. In other words, it starts at an origin, it ends with the boundary, and those two things are in advanced and retarded communication with each other.
Again, this is just so reminiscent of me reading a little bit of Leibniz. I mean, this is just, what the hell are you talking about? What is this mush? What does this have to do with anything scientific?
Right? Free will is in determining one of those conspansive cycles, regardless of what its size is. So, in other words, there is a way to define free will that gets out of this pseudo-causal dichotomy between determinacy and indeterminacy that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, of something happening for no reason. Yes, there's cause and effect or not cause and effect. If you believe in free will, you don't believe in cause and effect. So what's so complicated? You believe in woo. Okay, got it.
Right? In other words, you're creating the medium. You're actually creating space-time as you
blah, 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 blah.
Create a new state. Right? When you bring that new mental state into your head, you've actually done it by creating space-time. Right? This is a kind of a very profound, very weird way of looking at it. I understand that it sounds weird, but it's the only way, in my opinion, things can work.
I will comment more generically because I'm not familiar with Chris's terminology, so it's impossible for me to go into the details of that. But
yeah, that's another way of saying, whoa, that was a big bucket of woo. What, I'm supposed to waste neurons figuring out what all that woo was about? No, why should I waste my perfectly good neurons on that? I mean, I might as well just hit myself in the head with a hammer.
You offered, Kurt, that I am currently against free will. There's a lot of nuance to this, so let me try to clarify this.
No, why pussyfoot around a concept that doesn't mean anything? Again, free to what? Free from what? Free from knowledge, free from education, free from practice. All of a sudden, I practice throwing a baseball into a little tiny hole and I get really, really good at it. And I should now acquire the freedom to fuck it up. What do you mean? What for? What would that do? What is the point of that? What do I need free will for if all it's going to do is fuck things up?
If the question of free will is linked to a materialist metaphysics, like people worrying that, oh, if my choices are determined by the patterns of brain activity in my brain, then I don't have free will. Well, on that account, I think people need not be afraid, because I don't think physiological patterns of brain activity cause your choices. I think they are what your choices look like. In Schopenhauer's terminology, they are appearances.
So there's no choices, there's just decisions. Right? Your brain is not going to make a choice. It will never choose anything. It never sits somewhere and goes, I don't know what to do. No, they're all logic gates, they're all electron and proton interactions, and they have inevitable outcomes. They have rules over the outcome. The outcome has to happen. The universe is so technically accurate. I mean, a photon travels billions of light years across space and it hits a target, you know. It's right in the center of the bullseye. Nothing happens unless something happens. I mean, everything is obliged to follow the rule book. There is just no whoops. Nothing slips on banana peels. There is no or wooey pills. There is none of that crap. It's an incredibly precise mechanism. There's no room for any mistakes. And mistakes don't make something smarter. That only works for evolution. Evolution is just using let's accidentally every now and then have a happy accident. Okay, that is, let's make a mistake and the mistake actually turns out to improve the point on the arrow. Okay, we're drawing the picture of the arrow and the arrow does have a little dent in it, and we make a mistake in copying it and we fill in the dent and now it's perfectly smooth, and so now we've improved the arrow so it works better. Yeah, so evolution is taking advantage of error, but at a huge price, in the sense that it makes a bunch of monsters that are covered in errors. You know, the failures are huge. The number of failures for one success is monstrous. Our brain is not working that way. Our brain is not feeding on error code. It's feeding on precision. Shit.
Representations. The thing in itself is your choice. So no, your choices are not determined by your brain activity. Your brain activity is what the process of making choices look like.
Oh, it's just such baby talk. I mean, there's no, you start at the starting line and here's the finish line and there's hurdles in the way, and it's a fact that the person's either going to jump the hurdles or they're not. And the fact is that the conditions that will decide whether they will successfully jump the hurdle, like there's a little dent in the dirt, there's some other little thing they're going to slip on, and they're going to miss the hurdle because of that little slip or that little error. And all of that already exists in the track before they even start running. The things, the causes and the effects, the causes are already built in. You can't change the causes. You can't play this game that, well, it's not until we turn the camera on that it takes the picture. It's already inevitable what the picture's going to be. It's already set up by the environment. The environment's already dictating what the decision will be. It's just silly to say the choice doesn't happen until the choice happens. No, there's no choice. There's inevitable outcomes for systems. Systems have inevitable outcomes. Damn.
Then you would say, well, then I am endorsing free will. Well, now we have now to understand what people mean by free will. What people mean by it is that their choices are determined by that which they identify themselves with, as opposed to being determined by something that they don't identify with. And most people don't.
I mean, this is just playing such a semantics word game with the concept. This is what people think free will is, and this is how they think about it, and this is what they're, you know, it's just changing the subject. It's cause and effect. Okay, it doesn't. Who cares about? Oh well, I'm sitting here thinking I'm confused, therefore I am confused. Well, no, they've already proven that your brain's already made the decision. So even when you think you're confused, you're not really confused, but your brain already made the decision 5 seconds ago, and you just haven't. It just hasn't got to your fingers yet. I mean, come on. Science already proves this to be mush. Oh, crap. All right, I'll play some of it. And I'll be back.
Choices are random. They're saying that their choices are determined by their preferences, their tastes. They are determined by them. At the level of the mind of nature, every choice is determined by the mind of nature, because there is nothing beyond the universal mind, the universal consciousness.
What is wrong with people? What is this mush, the mind of nature? It's just such a pile of puke. I mean, we have so few instincts, okay, human beings. I mean, we're stripped of all of them, okay? I mean, of all the mammals on Earth, we are born completely useless. I mean, you know, it takes years just to even get you know, it takes years to walk. It takes years to talk. It takes years to be at all in any kind of reasonable functionality, even close to being survivable as an organism on your own. You got to be at least, what, 7? Something like that? I mean, you know, you got to be pretty old to have any hope of surviving on your own. I mean, it's just, you know, it's just silly. The mind of nature, no. This is just silly baby talk. Yes, we have some biological functions. Our livers demand certain things be met, and our hearts, and our this and that, and all this functionality has to meet certain natural standards. But it's such a tiny bit of who we are and what our consciousness is occupied by. To say that you know, nature has any free will is just so silly. Or to say we're free to choose what part of nature we're going to be obedient to is again silly. If you're born without legs, you have to learn how to adapt. You know, it's just a fact. And there's not going to be any freedom involved. There won't be some choice. Anyway, just too silly. Oh, God. It's painful now. This is getting to be painful. They're both nuts. The mind of nature.
Distinguish free will, what's happening there, from determinacy and non-determinacy. Okay, so it is useful to talk about free will just to distinguish it from what we usually mean by causation. And once we do that, then we find out that we can describe it as...
All right, so he just did, the other guy did concede that it would be silly to talk about nature as having anything called free will. So again, he's conceding the argument. So he says our free will is a manifestation of nature, and yet he says nature's determined, and nature determines what we're going to be. So again, it's just silly. It's just, they're playing word games to sit there and, you know, hide the free will nut under some cup or something. I mean, it's just bullshit. It's about cause and effect. You either believe in it or you don't. And again, and he said the exact words. He said, what good would randomness be? It wouldn't be of any value. Free would be random. Random isn't useful.
Certainly.
It's not useful to logic. It's useful to evolution, but it wouldn't be useful to logic.
Right, in terms of this conspansion and telerecursion thing that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah, well, we don't need to talk about that, so I'll pause. Eesh. So after all that mush, he just said everything is determined. So the guy who just did this mush about nature's mind being free will just said everything's determined. And now this guy's going to ask him a question about, because he just said everything's determined, and now he's probably offended by that because he thinks something isn't determined. So let's see this part. But I mean, this is just such word soup. Word salad mush.
Of reality, what determined the structure of reality? In other words, there was nothing outside reality. According to general relativity, basically, reality is ontically and geometrically closed. Okay, so there's nothing outside. There's no extrinsic form of causation that could have caused the universe to take any particular form. So aren't we talking about the universe taking its own form, somehow deciding within itself what form it should take?
Deciding within itself can only happen if that decision is determined by what it is.
Yes, but what decides? Who decides what it is?
Nobody. At the end of the day, at the bottom level of nature, something exists.
Okay, so now they're really getting into the convoluted nonsense of what determined whatever the origins of the universe are. And we can't even, there's no point in even speculating on the origins of matter in the universe. It could have been introduced one electron at a time over a bazillion years. You know, every year one more electron pops into the universe. You know, one electron, because of some mechanism in the universe, an electron splits in two or some kind of bullshit. And one electron is created per year, you know. And all you need is enough years and you end up with a universe full of electrons and protons and all this crap. I mean, who knows? The universe could have evolved. The universe could be a reoccurring expansion and contraction, as I think it is. Who cares? We know it is in a condition, and we know there's explicit, hard rules about how that condition evolves and changes. It doesn't change randomly or spontaneously or without cause. There's always a pre-circumstance and then an outcome. There's always what's its present condition and what's going to be its future condition. And yes, the wooists, the Feynman types think, yes, the universe is intrinsically random and You have the same exact circumstances and you won't have the same exact outcome. But the fact is that if you've rolled dice or you've done something, you realize, yeah, this could be repeatable. I have to just do it the same way and it'll get the same outcome. You know, there's no way there's anything wooey going on. Alright. We'll pause. Alright, well, we're getting a little over an hour, so maybe we'll sum up. So we'll do a little bit of this. He's on the subject of the reductionism, okay? The fact is that it's all made out of something. All the something has properties. That means all the something is in a condition. The condition has an inevitable outcome. The condition is a circumstance. You're standing on the edge of the cliff. The cliff is being eroded by the ocean. You're going to fall into the ocean. These kind of circumstances are existing all over the universe. They're just waiting to be played out through time. And that's it. It's a sequence of events. And the sequence is determined by the first condition. The first condition decides all the subsequent conditions. Your body falls into the ocean. It decomposes. The little molecules fly around in the ocean. They wash up on a shore somewhere. A seed grows on the little piece of chemistry that you used to be. These are all inevitable consequences of the first act of you falling into the ocean. The first act that you're calling the first act. But there is no first act. There's just a sequence of causes and effects.
As opposed to what it is not, or to what it could have been. So even the mind of nature is...
So even this rhetoric, to even say the words as a scientific person, the mind of nature, I mean, why say that? There is no mind. Nature, again, is just a state of conditions. There's a certain temperature. There's a certain this, a certain that, a mixture of chemistry, a lightning bolt, blah, 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 blah. There's no mind of nature. There's just a sequence of causes and effects that made the first neuron, that made the first any cell you want to pick.
Is a mind that has properties.
That's awfully inspecific, though.
Yeah. It's a mind that has properties. So he's talking about an infinitely big biosphere having some sort of properties. It has a whole bunch of properties. It has a certain amount of oxygen available, a certain amount being produced, a certain amount being consumed. It's at a certain equilibrium. There's a certain humidity. There's a certain this, a certain that, a certain all this crap. And we know that all this crap happens in these little isolated places. And we know that the evolution itself is this punctuated equilibrium. That lots of good things happen. Lots of quality organisms are created, but they're created in too small a number, and they never get to grow and overwhelm the existing ones, or the existing ones dilute the good genetics and turn it back into shitty genetics. I mean, these are all the rules. There is no mind of nature. There's just more events. Just billions and zillions of events. And some of them suck. And some of them would have been very good. I mean, the invention of morphine, good idea. Penicillin, good idea. Lots of other bad ideas. Yeah. Okay, I'll play a little bit more.
I mean, you're not attaching any properties to this ultimate reduction that you're talking about. So, but you're saying, and yet, everything that the universe is somehow determined by it. I don't think that's, quite kosher. I think that we have to actually try to attach some properties to it in order to derive.
No, I am attaching. I just said to be is to have properties. So whatever...
So whatever the cause was, it was a something, not a nothing. Nothing didn't make something. Some things turn into something else, turns into something else, turns into something else. It's the evolution of somethings. Okay, not the evolution of nothings. Whatever. Okay, so that's again circular. We just go around and around and around and around. So whether you want to make the free thing in the creator, in the first event was the poofer, the nothing created the something, who cares? Because after that it was all cause and effect. We know that, again, that every scientific experiment dictates that it's cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. And the only thing that looks a little bit, like maybe there's no cause and effect, is so tiny that we don't have a videotape of it, and so we can make up anything we want to make up. So they make up a whole bunch of wooiness in the tiniest places in the universe. That's where all the wooiness is hiding. But everything big isn't doing any woo. All right, it isn't doing any of this magical poofing and superpositioning and entanglement conversations and ESP and all that bullshit. None of that's happening in any part of the real universe that we can detect, that we can see, that we can test. So it's all a bunch of theoretical mush, frankly. And the fact is, we're just mechanical machines. We're just robots. And as much as you don't think you're a robot and that you don't think you've been programmed, you have been programmed by every single event in your life has basically just left a mark. You've been trimmed into a shape, okay, by your life experience. Every little bit of it has been trimmed, and this is the shape you're in after your trimming, after your bludgeoning by reality. And you know, based on the fact that you had a certain genetic code, okay, so you had a strong this and a weak that and a blah blah blah. You came into the game with certain dispositions. I mean, I might be a little bit nervous and, you know, a little bit, you know, my adrenal glands pump a little too much juice. We all have our little things that made it, the same event we've reacted to the same event differently because one of us, you know, the air pressure pushed on our ears and gave us a headache instead of having a good time. So yeah, that's it. Those little irregularities, those little changes. So it's just scissors cutting, you know, mushy wet paper. You know, but that's all it is. And that's all you're a byproduct of. You're just a robot. You're just a machine, a mechanical device, okay, built by nature to squirm through the humus, the dead body parts, and eke out your silly, stupid survival. And lay your putrid eggs, you know, and impose a bad game on the next generation. You know, keep just playing a bad game over and over and over again. Yeah. But that's... you consciousness is just a monitor inside your brain. That's all it is. It's an output inside your brain. Only you can see it. Only you can feel it. Okay, the pair of scissors doesn't feel my pain. It has no idea, no clue, no anything. It doesn't think my thoughts. It's all just in my brain. My brain makes all of it, and it's all bullshit, except for the logic, the facts, the sentences. All of that is structured for a specific purpose. All of that has some integrity, but all the other crap is just crap. It's just crap to make me into a survival machine, to make me fight, you know, and run away. You know, to make me do what I have to do to survive. Alright, that's probably enough. I'd like to be more optimistic, but there's just nothing, okay? Why bullshit? Why lie to each other about how it's all beautiful and charming when it's horrible and awful. And what's going to happen to me is going to be horrible and awful. And what's going to happen to you people is horrible and awful. You're going to be destroyed. You're going to be crushed. You're going to be smeared into the pavement. You're going to be burned alive. You're going to be something horrible. And it's disgusting that we're sitting here, you know, having this conversation as if this makes some sort of sense somewhere. No, it doesn't. Yeah. No, I don't want to go to school again. I don't want to relearn all the lessons all over again. I don't want to fight to get a right answer. I don't want to spend a lifetime searching and hunting and seeking. I don't want to do that over and over and over again. I don't want to have these silly conversations over and over and over again. Let it go. That's my message. Let it go. Just robots, beep, beep, boop, boop. Bullshit. Okay, until next time, and such, and so forth, and whatnot. Yeah. So, yeah. hopefully there won't be too many other entries in the contest, and so maybe this video will stand a chance. But yes, it's just going to get thumbs down because oh yeah, you're not pumping up, you're not pumping up the play, and you're not pumping up the bullshit, pumping up the nonsense, pumping up the crapola, pumping up the energy to just keep making your commercials. Yeah, no, I don't want to feed any part of this evil dragon. Alright, till the next time. Let's go forth on one note. You're a friggin' robot. Get over it.